our speaker, Anita Gale, is a retired aerospace engineer with 40 years of experience, mostly in payload and cargo integration for the Space Shuttle Program. She is a co-founder of Space Settlement Design Competitions, which she will get into, and president of the nonprofit organization responsible for conducting SSDC events worldwide. She is also CEO of the National Space Society, which is a new thing. So it is always a pleasure to be in the company of badass human beings. So it is my pleasure to introduce one of them, Miss Anita Gale.
Badass human being. First time I've been introduced that way, but that's terrific. The Space Settlement Design Competition started actually in 1983. You all know what Boy Scouts of America is, right? And then there's Explorer Scouts. Well, Boy Scouts have or had jamborees. Explorer Scouts have exploring conferences, national exploring conferences. So in 1983, the committee that was the science and engineering, or it was the committee organizing the program for the science and engineering cluster of the National Exploring Conference in 1984 got together, and they're planning their 1 week program. And they decide on Thursday they're going to do something fun all day about space. And they look around the room and realize nobody on the committee has any connection with space, except the then president of Society of Women Engineers happens to know me, and I work on Space Shuttle Program. So this is before email, internet, all that. Letters and phone calls ensued, and I collaborated with another member of the committee, a guy named Rob Kolstad. And what we decided to do that Thursday fun all day about space was a design a design exercise. I had been very interested in space settlements in the 1970s. Anybody remember space settlements? A guy named Gerard O'Neill, big deal in the 1970s. It was on the cover of Playboy and all over the place, and interviewed on Johnny Carson, and Jimmy Carter was elected, and NASA quit doing big cool things in space, so or studying. So anyway, just condensing what happened very briefly, we decided to run this design exercise. If you looked at the description of what we decided then in a 2.5-hour phone call on a Sunday afternoon, it basically is what we do now, except what we do now is much more sophisticated and global and way not what we expected would happen from one little event with 75 kids at Ohio State University in 1984 at an exploring conference. So things ensued. We now have a 501c3 nonprofit called Aerospace Education Competitions. You'll see a few copyrights in this presentation. Space Settlement Design Competitions is a registered trademark, and we do have a partnership with the National Space Society, which has been really beneficial because NSS is registered as a nonprofit in all 50 states. And that takes about 3 months every year and $15,000, and our little nonprofit could not do that. So we have a great partnership with them, and they can do things like business-to-business transactions with hotels and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's how it started. When we say global, we're not kidding. We have regional semifinals all around the world, some of which, well, in pre-COVID times and post-COVID times I actually go to. Sometimes Australia invites me to go. Asia wants me to go all the time. Yeah, and post-COVID, we'll get back doing this. I like to go to all of the semifinals in the USA. We have 4 semifinals in the USA. The most well-established is here at Johnson Space Center. Then we have a Northwest, Southwest, and an East Coast. And this is actually, so when you see that little green oval there, it says from SSDC, that is actually a briefing chart that we present to the students at a Space Settlement Design Competition. So this is the chart that shows them either you're in a semifinal and this is where you're trying to go, getting to the finals, or you're at the finals and this is where we all came from. At the top there, we say qualifying competition. So we have 2 different formats. Qualifying competition is, actually, if I weren't here right now, I would be at home working on the scenario right now. allows students from the US and Canada and a few other places to register for an exercise that they do either in school or at home. We will be sending out or letting them register and sending out the information within about a week. And the deadline for doing a 40-page written proposal is in April. So there are actually schools that use this. So qualifying, it's a 40-page written proposal they can do in their school. The semifinals are actual live weekend events. We've been doing them by Zoom. We've done a few hybrid Zoom and live in person, but mostly it's actually being there in person, and it's very intense. For the regions, every region is a little bit different. And we first realized this with Australia, and you think Australians, Americans, kind of the same. Every place is different. For instance, in Asia, if you don't charge quite a bit of money for an event, then they figure it's not worth anything and they won't come. In the UK, if you charge for an event, it's considered imprudent, unethical, just not what you do for students. If you charge for an event, people won't come. Because in the UK, we find that every wealthy person has their charity. So there are people who donate to their charity, and there are people in the UK who like what we do. So it's all donations and it's free for the kids, they just register. But in Asia, they want to pay money to know that it's worthwhile. So we don't interfere with the regions. The only thing we ask the regions is deliver us a finalist from your semifinal, and we want you to use one of our scenarios so that we know your students are prepared to work with all the other students at the finals. Other than that, just don't violate our trademarks or copyrights and we're cool. Okay. So this is a little bit awkward looking at it here. So it's what we do with space settlement design competitions, and this was the idea from the very beginning in 1984, planning in 1983, was we're emulating the experience for high school students of being on an industry proposal team, a space industry proposal team. And I've been on many proposals. I've been on proposals for commercial crew with Boeing. I've been on proposals for new vehicles, most of which were never built, but most new vehicle proposals are never built anyway, so what the heck. It is frustrating to know what could have been and isn't, but we won't go there. We arrange kids or assign kids to what we call companies. They're groups called companies. In a semifinal, we don't want them to be larger than 50 students. 50 students working together, does that ever happen in school? No, a big team doing a technical project is what, 8 kids? We put 50 kids together and they have very little time to put together a proposal answering 4 pages of requirements. So we give them an organization chart. We have a real manager, or oftentimes pairs or triples, real engineers and managers from industry who basically help guide them through that process. And they do respond, just as in industry, to a customer-provided request for proposal, which defines the requirements for what the customer wants this thing to do, this space settlement. We'll get into scenarios in a little bit. Everything is set in the future. We have, and I have copies of program books. I think I have 5 copies, so and if these disappear today I mean, we obviously don't have enough for everyone, but if those disappear, that's fine. I've got plenty more at home. And these are from the finals, so let's see, okay, we'll go there. And then I also have a notebook that I want to bring back with me with examples of requests for proposals. So we can go through that. All right. Has, what, 14 some pages, probably more, describing future history. And this is very dense text. And teachers will look at this and say it's a wall of text. Kids aren't interested in it. But what we're finding is kids can do more than, no offense to educators, kids can do more than we expect of them. And what we find is when we tell the kids, we know you can do this, we have designed this so you can do this in the time available, then they rise to your expectations. And they get the energy from all 50 of them. Nobody wants to slack off because they don't want to let down the team. It's just amazing to watch this magic happen with these kids. Literally, it's like they transport themselves into the future for a weekend. You remember the play Brigadoon from the 1950s where these modern people stumble onto a medieval village and that pops up every 100 years because of a curse. Well, it's kind of like that, except it's going into the future. These kids for a weekend, they literally are absorbed in this future setting that we establish for them. And we know we're a good STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math program because we do have volunteers who say they're engineers. In fact, I think I have some quotes later. They're engineers only because of the design competition, changed their life. When we do surveys, there's a standard question in STEM events. Are you more likely to enter a STEM curriculum and career as a result of this event? And when we do a survey, our positive responses to that question are in the 85 to 90% region. And for most events, they figure they're doing a fantastic job if they get a 50% positive response. We do better than that. And we really don't know why it works. We just know it does, and the kids love it. So I mentioned organization chart. This is the organization chart. Also, it looks a little bit different in well, mostly the same. Notice this is copyrighted, so if any of you teachers out there think, wow, this looks like a really good idea, I'm going to do this myself, please contact me and we will help you. But don't use our name or our formats without our permission, please. We are trademarked and copyrighted. So what we do is the CEO at the top is a volunteer, engineer or manager, or can be, actually they're National Space Society officers who have served as volunteers. And they serve as CEO. We have 4 companies competing. When we have a full complement of 200 kids, we'll have 4 companies competing, 50 kids each. So they're kid presidents and kid vice presidents, kid department directors, and everyone not in the boxes of the organization chart is in one of the departments or as staff to the vice president of marketing and sales. So marketing and sales in the design competition basically is putting together the briefing, making sure that the points of the request for proposal have been designed to, that they're responses, and making sure those designs get into the briefing in a logical order. They have 35 minutes to present. And it's just as in industry, there's a page limit and a time limit, so it's 50 briefing charts and 35 minutes. And the task is too big to fit in that, on purpose, because that's how it works in industry as well. So there are all kinds of dimensions that are like industry. And these 4 engineering departments are designed to basically accommodate all of the requirements that I know of from being interested in living in space, and that's what the National Space Society is all about, is living in space. I'm going to a conference next week called the Space Settlement Summit, where we will have people getting together looking at technologies for living in space. And you need the overall structural design, you need the infrastructure, the operations that makes it all work inside, you need human engineering, which is safety, like spacesuits and airlocks and that sort of thing. Well, airlocks can go anywhere, but certainly spacesuits. And also community design. We're talking about communities of maybe 5,000, 10,000, even a mini scenario of 350. It's like a small town. So you need to think of what is in a town of 10,000 people, what is not in a town of 10,000 people, and design that, and then it just happens to be in space. But we want them to understand how their community works as a result of working on these projects. And then automation engineering is for the kids who just want to work on computers and robots and make projectors work and stuff. The schedule is rather packed. This is actually from a Johnson Space Center semifinal. So kids arrived after dinner on a Friday night. We do feed them pizza overnight. We talk at them about what we're going to do to them over the weekend, and it literally is what we're going to do to them. We actually call these events tormenting kids. We even tell the kids we're tormenting kids, and they say, yeah, torment me some more, because for them it is so much fun. For our volunteers, it is so much fun. So we talk to them about how the weekend proceeds, and then you see 9 p.m. assignments to design competition companies. So basically we have 200 kids come. They don't know who they're working with. Just as in an industry proposal team, I was a Boeing employee, and people with the appropriate skills for that particular proposal may be brought in from all over the corporation. You're working with people you don't know, or if you do a lot of proposals, you know some of them. And you need to congeal quickly as a team and get product out and make it look like one person wrote this whole proposal. It's the same thing here. So the kids come in as 200 kids, individual kids, and by the end of Friday night, they're assigned to companies, and then they need to figure out who fits where in the organization chart. I'm not even sure how they do that. I don't get involved with that part because I'm running the whole thing. And then Saturday morning, we talk at them a little bit more about their technical disciplines, once they're in departments. Well, this is really what you have to do in structural engineering, et cetera. And by about, 10:30 in the morning, we give them the requirements, which for a semifinal is 4 pages of densely packed text with small margins. For what we call a mini scenario, it's 3 pages. We'll show you a little bit more of that later on. By 7:30 Sunday morning, the next morning, that's, what's that, 21 hours? If they don't eat and don't sleep, they need to have their design completed, put into briefing charts, and ready to present. And they do it. It's amazing. They do it. It's incredible. We've had teachers say, oh, they need more time to do this. No, if they have more time to do this, they'll just stay up all night. So many of them don't sleep Saturday night. They stay up all night Saturday night working on their proposal. And we craft these so they could get it done by midnight or 1 a.m., but they're humans, so they procrastinate like people do. And it's a very challenging thing that the timestamp there in the lower right says 5:49 a.m., and a kid just passed out on his keyboard. Here's one. This was actually at the Museum of Flight in Seattle, and notice there's a kid passed out on falling asleep on the carpet, just even though the kid's shirt says California, this was in India, and this is a universal, oh my God, kind of reaction. So they put a lot of work into this stuff. So is it a real experience? So we make it as real as possible. All of our decisions about how to run these competitions are based on how real proposal teams work in industry. So there's a customer who's very demanding, especially when I'm asking questions in the judging. They're actually afraid of me, which is really cute. And it's the deadline is short, the page limit is, everything is really challenging about this. But we get the responses that, I didn't know I could do something like this. It gives them so much confidence. There are design competition alumni who go into the military academies where the first year is notoriously really tough. And they'll say, after the design competition, first year in the military academy was a snap. They go into college, and I'm a college leader because I learned how to lead in the design competition. And every kid brings something else out of it. We've actually had design competition alumni who go into nonprofit organizations and they learned how to speak in front of a group and not be nervous, and that's what they do. We never know how we're going to change people's lives. It does emphasize not so much technology. Technology is just the framework, but it's about management and teamwork and communication, which is how companies work. Management, teamwork, communication. We teach management to high school kids, and they learn how to do management. And I've been on panels with respected educators saying, oh, you can't teach management to educators. Yes, you can. And also, we've used words like infrastructure and consortiums of companies and doing things with, doing a lot of economics in space with private companies. Well, that's all starting to happen. We've been talking about it for 35 plus years, and it's starting to happen. We've actually predicted what is happening in industry right now. The word infrastructure, I had never heard it at a conference. We've been using the word infrastructure almost from the beginning. And I remember going to a conference, I forget who was on the panel, but it was actually SpaceCom here in Houston a few years ago. And there's a panel of esteemed industry leaders, and one of them looks out in the audience, sees me, and says, because Anita Gale is in the audience, I have to say the word infrastructure here on stage. and that word, NASA is talking about infrastructures. There are conferences about infrastructure, and people don't realize where it came from. We have kids that want to be tormented again over and over again, so they literally, their whole high school career, they will come, which means you don't want them to do the same scenario every time. So we have a 5-year chronology of scenarios. The first 2 years, we're doing scenarios in the relative near term on the moon and in cislunar space, Earth orbit. Years 2 and 4, we go to Mars and the asteroid belt. Every one of these scenarios is different. And then year 5, which is where we are right now, we go to Mercury and Venus. And we get into some really bizarre, we're in the 2090s, and we get into some really bizarre things with Mercury and Venus. We prepare usually 5 different scenarios. There are 3 big ones, which are indicated in red. These are the 4-page ones, and I'll show you they have a naming convention associated with them. And then we do what we call minis, which will be used. Some semifinals prefer to do a mini. We have, in Asia, they do nationals, so there's an India national and a China national. I won't do that to kids here. So is anyone familiar with FIRST Robotics? Okay, okay, familiar with FIRST. So what happens with FIRST Robotics, you do a competition like in the winter, and if you win your local, then you go to a bigger one and a regional and a state. And I knew a family where their kid went all the way to the finals, and literally for the entire spring, like months, every other weekend, they're traveling further and further away for this competition. This kid is doing nothing except FIRST Robotics. I don't want to do that to a kid. Kid isn't going to learn or get any more out of it by doing 5 of them than they do by doing 1 or 2. So that's, anyway, so we work that out through the regions. We also have something new called a tournament, and they also use the mini scenarios. Okay, let's see. So we tell them they're in a certain year. Actually, I'm going to show you some materials from year 2, 2054. They were designing a lunar mining base, which is a mini scenario. And the big scenarios all have a naming convention. In that box on the upper right, there's a suffix on the name of every one of them. So AT means it's in orbit around Terra, around Earth. OM means it's on Mars. AM means in orbit around Mars. And then you notice all of the names start with A, B, or C, or they could be, we've had some going to D. So A indicates Alexandria ends with AT, it's in orbit around Earth. A means it's the first one, ABC, 1, 2, 3, Michael Jackson song, wasn't it? So, and actually, year 5, we're actually going to mix it up again. We're going to have one in orbit around Venus. We're just going to move, we're running out of time here. So, there's an economic justification, and literally, this is like a roadmap. These scenarios are like a roadmap for how humans could occupy space, given certain inventions and discoveries that happen along the way. Let's see, we are running out. So there's, for everyone, we have a press release from the customer saying, this is why we want to build this settlement, who we're going to do it with. And I mentioned the program book has lots of pages of background material describing these are the resources available now. We also have pages of subcontractors, like 4 or 5 pages of subcontractors, because we don't want to make kids have to, how do I do air? And every time they have to do air the same way or similarly, or how do you get water, or how do you do recycling? How do you do a spacesuit? We don't want them to have to do that over and over again. So we literally tell them, they're subcontractors to do this. We want you to do the creative stuff of the uniqueness of this design. And honestly, it is looking right now for real like there are going to be subcontractors making air, making water, making fuel, making commodities from lunar materials, like household goods. Procter & Gamble is interested in space because everywhere people go, they need to clean things and clean themselves, right? P&G, interested in space. It's not a space company. They come to space conferences. Okay, and we do update the scenarios. There are schools in India that have an archive of our old requests for proposals, and the kids try to pre-design stuff. So my job is to make sure when they come to the India National or the Asian Regional, anything they pre-designed is crap because it doesn't match the requirements for the new scenario, which means I am writing new scenarios all the time. Yeah, I'm busy. All right, we're out of time here. So we have 5 different company names, like at the Johnson Space Center competition, we have 4 companies. They can choose from the 5 company names, so nobody's stuck with, oh, I had to be Grumbo or whatever. And then, well, I mentioned subcontractors. And actually, yeah, important point, these are, the subcontractors list, which you can see here in the program books, they are real business opportunities. Okay, So I said roadmap. I'm not going to go through all of this, but for instance, the ones indicated in purple are actual design competition mini scenarios. And this idea of unscheduled hours, I'm guessing most of you have heard, or many of you have heard, that 3M has a charge number for their engineers to, especially their lab engineers, to have unscheduled hours, to just be creative and do whatever they want. There are not unscheduled hours on the space station, on International Space Station, which means there are probably opportunities for creativity and new products and new things to do in zero-G and almost more importantly, complete perfect vacuum. That we aren't finding because it's people on the ground deciding what they do in space. And you don't know an environment until you're in it. So we really need to get unscheduled hours in space. Let's see. Okay, and we actually show them a Gantt chart. Yes, that's copyrighted. For every competition, we have a Gantt chart showing them this is the infrastructure in space right now. Examples of subcontractors. At the break, you can look at the program books and see those. Litigation limiters is important because the different companies have different products. So for instance, if Dougaldine wants to use the Grumbo launch vehicle, we don't want them to have to negotiate because the Grumbo kids may say, no. And then Dougaldine stuck with not having a launch vehicle. So we just say there's a company called Litigation Limiters, and you can use any other company's products by going through this law firm called Litigation Limiters. It just peels off like a 1 or 5%, 2%, something like that. But they're basically, these are commodities and services that can be bought from subcontractors. Just like you get a house and you hook up the gas, right? I'm out of time, I'm sorry. So this is an example of a request for proposal. This is a mini scenario. Obviously, I don't expect you to read the 3 pages on the left. The big scenarios are 4 pages. And basically, the 0.2, 0.3, I'm sorry, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3s are similar on every RFP. I mean, you're not going to do any settlement in space without 3.2, which is food, water, air. You're going to need those things. Electricity, you need those things. So you need something like 3.2 in any scenario. But the 0.4s are always different and unique to that particular scenario. And then on the bigger RFPs, we have a section 6, which is business opportunities. And what the kids create in the amount of time can be very detailed, very artistic. Upper right, you see exactly what we do for real. Yeah, I know I'm out of time. You see exactly what we do for real on real proposals. We call it a wall walk, where you put your pages up on a wall. The lunar mining scenario actually is the image on the the image on the lower right is one team's response. We find that this is experience not taught in high school, and we realized only in the last few years that even in college, in engineering school, even in business school, people are not taught how to work in an organization chart. And most engineers in a big company are going to work in an organization chart. And they need to learn communication between departments and inside their department and with managers. Our kids learn to work in an organization chart before going in industry and seeing one for the first time. Okay, but like I said, we get kids experiencing it differently. We get "you changed my life" frequently. Oh, and for college students, yeah, a great quote. I had no idea how important this human factors stuff is. This is an aerospace engineer who's going to be designing airplanes or spacecraft for people to be in and didn't realize human factors was important. Okay, we've been volunteering to use our materials. We have this whole infrastructure of the program book and all this, so it can be used for other other purposes. There have been experiments that kind of didn't pan out for various reasons. We are trying to get this out to more students, so we're developing a parallel concept called a tournament. And in fact, I'm not joining you for lunch because after this I'm going home for a Zoom call with some folks in Brownsville, Texas, who are going to be doing a design competition in the tournament format for kids in Mexico. So there'll be some Brownsville kids and some kids in Mexico. So it's another country we're working with. There are 2 schools that actually use our qualifying scenario that I know of for a class project. Durango High School, Durango, Colorado has been using our qualifying scenario for an AP Physics project. And Friday Harbor High School in the San Juan Islands of the state of Washington uses the qualifying scenario. in English class as an example of how the English language is used in industry. And they usually do an awesome proposal. Okay, STEM is important now. Maybe I didn't need to include this slide, but we know we make a difference for kids. And there are a lot of STEM activities out there that get a lot of attention and attract a lot of resources, and they really don't have great results. So we need to talk about not just investing in STEM programs, but ones that are proven to really work. Wilcox High School has a rock that was left there by a mining company that normally is painted when a team wins a game. We won a football game, we paint the rock about defeating whoever, Duncan or what's it, other towns around there. And the kids who came back from the finals one year painted the rock for, they won the finals. It's painted over again now, but it wasn't touched for about a year. We would love to make this concept available to every kid in the country. In this country, we'll let the regions do their own things. UK especially has this huge infrastructure reaching out all over the nation. But we're trying to grow, and it's challenging. Okay. We're at spaceset.org is the master website, and students can register for competitions through spaceset.org. Volunteers are handling the website. I don't know if issdc.org is doing registrations, but can register for US SemiFinals through spaceset.org, although JSC has its own website. But I think there's still a few spots available to sign up for the Johnson Space Center competition. If you know a high schooler who's interested, that's in March. We're still working on organizing and growing Southwest, Northwest, and East Coast. So if a kid is willing to travel, we will probably have spots available for weekend competitions in those 3 areas. And then anybody any organization can do or put together a team for a qualifying entry. Also, you can Google space settlement design competitions, and you might find some interesting YouTube videos. All right, thank you for your attention. Okay, thank you.